live.
Everybody. I was nervous to come out here, and then I just met Master P, so I think we'll have a great session.
Now we're nervous. Thanks, Heather.
So everyone's here today for one reason. There's something about the title of this session that resonated in some way. You're all struggling with capacity, ad ops. There's something hard about what's going on within your operation, your teams, your department. And we're here to talk about what those challenges are, but also we're here because we have a real solution for those pain points. So we're super excited to talk to you. I have to also advance slides, so there's a lot to do here. We're going to talk about how to activate data in real time, how to use automation to streamline your ad operations, how to reduce risk in that ad delivery, and how to unlock scale. So whether you're an agency and you're looking to decouple headcount from account growth, or you're a brand looking to do more with less folks, we solve in a number of ways. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm just the moderator. I'm Heather. I'm the VP of Growth here at Fluency. But the people you want to hear from is Eric Mayhew. He's a CPO of Fluency, one of our founders. And then also Ben Gilbert works with Dealer.com, Cox Automotive, Senior Director of Innovation there. So thank you guys for coming.
Well, thanks for having us, Heather. This is going to be fun. So something we're really passionate about, and let's jump into it.
Let's go.
Awesome. So let's set the landscape. Advertisers have a lot to do. The days of just managing Google and all their complexities are behind us. Now we have Google, we have Meta, we have DSPs, we have display advertising, YouTube, Pinterest, all the channels that you all want to leverage. And it's getting increasingly harder and harder to do that manually and be able to do it efficiently. So Eric, I'd love to talk to you about what trends are you seeing out there in the advertising land?
Yeah, absolutely, Heather. Like you said, these channels are pervasive. We have to be there. It's grown over time. When we first started many years ago, I am old now. When we first started, Google was enough. And Google was the digital footprint that we wanted. But as you can see from this slide, it's expanded. We have to find ourselves on YouTube. We have to find ourselves on Meta, all over Meta. And it's just grown. And it's no longer this concept of this linear funnel. What we're seeing in the trend is that these are just multi-touch points. You have to be multifaceted and there all the time. So you're going to try to receive that consumer where they are dwelling in the mind frame, in the mindset that they're at while they're on those properties. Differently, you're going to have to understand where they've been and where they're going. So if you want to drive this through and capture that interest, it's going to be this multi-touch concept as we go forward.
Awesome. So the burden of execution. Talk about the landscape, now let's talk about what's happening in the day-to-day. So increasingly, we have more things to think about when we're executing advertising, right? It could be brand compliance, it could be new specials, building QBRs and reporting decks. It doesn't matter what it is. I'd love to hear from you, Ben, a little bit about what were the things that you guys are spending a lot of time on. What was complex about the operation at Cox Automotive?
Yeah. And to Eric's point, the last few years, the complexity has just grown with the channel expansion. And our world lives in ratios, the number of accounts or portfolios to a single resource. And anytime we're adding more features, more capabilities, or more channels, it just adds more work, right? And then across a ratio, you're just multiplying that across the board. So the old days of using spreadsheets and including user error, just escalated that across all the channels that we have in our mix, right? Part of that, led to staff turnover, team attrition. We really wanted to have job satisfaction to allow automation to do a lot of their low value actions. And I'm going to use that word a lot today because one of our core goals is to, as I said, automate all low value actions so the team, the end users, can have more client conversations and more high value impact to their accounts and portfolio.
Yeah, I'd love you have something to add.
Well, Ben and I are kindred spirits here, and we actually have worked together for a long time through the journey. This is the thing that really Fluency is anchored on. So the entire business that I work on in the last 20 years of my life has been about this specific problem. I used to sit late at night. I'm a software developer, just so you guys can know what I do. I like to write code. It'd be late at night, I'd be in the office, and I would see someone from Ben's ad ops team there, 7:30, frustrated, angry, because they have such a complex ask from one of their clients that was going to take all weekend. So this has only gotten worse over the last years. And when I say worse, it's such a weird thing because I love the fact that we have these new opportunities. There's new growth things. There's things for us to experiment with. There's things for us to try that are going to be more effective in advertising, but they are still yet more things. Our ad ops team, they have, like Ben said, they have ratios. They have, to be a profitable agency or a brand, you've got ratios on how much you want to put into the labor of executing advertising. I've got a little video here that we're going to talk to. I'm going to introduce you to Paul. Paul is one of our experts at Fluency, and he's going to kind of just show you what the job looks like. If you haven't seen it, you may have seen it a million times. I don't know. But when Paul goes through this, we'll do it in fast time. But when Paul goes through this, this is the alternative to having automation. This is having someone that knows what values should be in. Is the video playing by any chance? Yeah. Awesome. Someone that knows what settings need to be in every single one of the 1,000 potential fields that you can put into a Google Ads campaign. And that's just one channel. So when you looked at that stack of things, Paul is going to go through that stack of things right now. It's going to take, in fast time, it's going to take a half an hour to do one campaign. Now, there are shortcuts. I don't want to make it sound like every campaign always is a half an hour. But when you stack that up and you do compelling advertising, those things are closer to than far from this kind of time. And Ben has done some very large portfolio launches. They would have been out of reach without automation. They just take too much time. There's just too much to manage there. Now, what I love about Paul is Paul knows every one of those settings. What I don't love for Paul is that Paul has to click into fields and type them in over and over again. Like, that's the problem. We have experts in our team, and in those teams, those experts shouldn't be button clickers. They should be thoughtful.
Awesome.
I don't know where we are with Paul, but did Paul?
All done yet?
We're done. Awesome.
Okay. So hopefully some of this is resonating with all of you, whether you've sat in the seat or you are actually managing a team of people doing this work. So what our goal is to stop doing that, right? Is to have great platforms. You guys all have amazing strategy, and those two things combined will really help change the game. So we think that ad operations is going to have a moment right here. There's going to be the dark ages of executing and delivering advertising. That's going to be your manual button pushes. That's going to be your Frankenstacks with 10 different tools and swivel chairing. And then there's going to be tomorrow, which is already today for some of our customers, but there's going to be tomorrow where all of that goes away. It's going to be your team shows up and they're reviewing and QAing, that they're looking for issues that are surfaced because the platform's always out there watching. It's always out there monitoring. So for us to really get good and have great performance, we need our strategists who are just glorified taskmasters today to actually be strategists. And the way to do that and the way to have them focus on improving the advertising and not managing the advertising is through data-driven ads that are powered by an automation platform. And that's what we want to talk a little bit about today. So I want to know from you, Eric, tell me a little bit about the type of things that we're helping customers with.
So there are some things that are very low-hanging fruit and that are very obvious. You just saw Paul's button clicks. The punchline at the end of that video was that I asked Paul now to do it again on Microsoft, right? So he's not going to be happy. He's just done a half an hour. He's going to have to do it again on Microsoft, and then he's going to have to do it again in Meta. And those things are just untenable. We need to help that automated button clicking. We want Paul to be able to design and define his strategy, his decision points, and the data that goes into those decision points. From that point forward, we want automation to go do that for him. I think if we were all to say we're going to pay Paul, we pay Paul pretty well, right, Brian? Like we pay Paul pretty well. The last thing I want to do is pay him for button clicks. Like, just the wrong spot for us to be. So the ad operations is the first and foremost thing that we want to help automate. Use that data to drive that behavior. But what we found over time working with Ben and team and some of our other clients, we found that there are some upstream and some downstream things that are also extremely important to the ad operations that are also really time consuming. Ben came to me with a problem a while ago, and he said, we've gotten the ad operations really tight. It's effective and efficient. The challenge that we're having now is that we have to articulate the value. And if anybody's done this job here, 50% of our time is managing campaigns, and the other 50% seems to be justifying what we did to clients. Telling them why we did it, that we did a good job, all those types of things. And that can take a lot of time in its own right. So we started to work on some things on the downstream side in that value articulation. Using the data that we have, some patterns, we can build automated presentations. Ben will talk about that in a little bit, the success we've had there. There's some AI componentry in there that allows us to bring in video, generative, text to speech, text to video with video avatars that have been really compelling to tell a story. But then the other side, and Ben's challenging me on it right now, is on the onboarding side. The interviewing of your client, getting their goals, doing that in a nice structured way that you can actually take action on is a really time-consuming part of the job. So there's a front-end part of the house, the meat of the house, which I'll call the ad strategist role, that piece, and then finally that value articulation. And they may not even be the same team members. So I think there's a lot we can do here. It's proving to be very effective. 90% time savings in most cases, which is, you're not going to believe me. You're not going to believe me. 90%. Pretty confident. It's like an unheard of number. So, but it's amazing if you automate properly.
Well, I think someone here can confirm that.
Yes, someone can confirm it, I promise.
So let's talk about a real life example. Ben, if you could tell us a little bit about how automation and data-powered advertising has changed things at your operation.
Yeah, and one of the first things from an operations team's perspective is being a student of your numbers. What are your teams spending a majority of their time doing? What is their capacity numbers, right? And working with Eric, as you alluded to, we looked at some pretty glaring trends of what they're spending their time on, that low value actions. And one of the first things we built together was something we call the coffee cup dashboard. Every morning, when an ad strat logs into their accounts, they can see all the information that is brought to them of what needs to be worked on that day. No longer do they have to go hunt or go find for something that's broken, or worse, a dealer calls up because nobody wants to see their own ad like a car dealer to find out, hey, this isn't what I want, this isn't right. So again, that dashboard allows them to fix or get their attention, what needs to be fixed the first moment of the day. The rest of the day, they can start working on more strategic things. New channel opportunities, more budget conversations, or overall, projects across the board. That's allowed us to, one, it's a lot more fun to do more strategic work and not just cutting and pasting and fixing things. And then also have more client conversations, which a lot of our ad strats just love doing.
I'm going to try to tee you up for a couple of things. We just mentioned that automated deck. I think that's a huge win, and I was hoping you could talk about it from your perspective, from your seat.
Yeah, so as I said, we looked at our capacity numbers, and another big chunk of time was our team spending time creating decks or PowerPoints for their performance reviews. Again, working with Eric and team, we're like, well, how do we automate this, but still have the flexibility for personalization? So we have the environment where it's a one-click render of a PowerPoint that has all account-specific information with trends and graphs, and it leverages avatars and AI information of deep diving into that account. And again, it's that one click compared to hours of manual efforts, cutting and pasting of screenshots and Excel sheets. And then we can ultimately deliver to our clients for proactive communication. One, the amount of hours has been thousands, right? We always say it would take a small team just to put together decks. And that's not a good use of our investment on the ops side or even a non-revenue generating team.
If I can just add a couple pieces in there. He gave it a lot more challenges than just that. He said, when you look at an advertising slide and there's a bunch of numbers on there, it's up to you to interpret it. And Ben said, we want to lead the customer through the wins. How are we going to find a way that we can tell a story that showcases the positives and really accentuates what we've done for them? And so we spent a lot of time in writing stories, interpreting data, using AI as well, just to make sure that that's all very clean. So it's a very bespoke experience as your customers go through it.
Yeah.
Would you also talk a little tiny bit about the onboarding side that we're currently working on?
The collab stuff?
Yeah, the collab stuff.
So as Eric talked about, there's the front of the house and the back of the house. And the front of the house really sets the tone for our client services. They have a kickoff call. There's a handoff from the sales of a net new sale to our onboarding teams before they start implementing the accounts for launch. We looked at that. We're like, how are you doing that? And what they're doing is they're having a call, take the information, writing it down themselves, entering into tickets into some type of CRM, Salesforce, taking that information and then manually executing. Well, how do we go from that step to that step? Meaning talk to the client and launching it in real time. And we've created some visuals where they can engage with it. Some fields, some toggles of what intent are they looking for? What are your business goals? And it's completely streamlined how our operations team collect information, hand off to our ops team for launching. And it's a better seamless experience for the clients as well, as their SLAs from launch time are going from multiple weeks to potentially hours.
What I really like about what you've done, Ben, is you've built these playbooks and ideas about how you would attack pretty much any problem. Anything that a dealership would bring to you for a customization, you've got a strategy for. And what's nice about the way you're collecting the data now, which I do love, by the way, had a little bit to do with it, is that it's collected in an organized and consistent way. It is actionable now. So it is not somebody hearing something on a phone call and putting it into a ticket for another person to read, interpret, and try to normalize. It's normalized out of the gates. It shortcuts all of that, and I think that's been a huge win. Love doing this with you.
Yeah, you as well. And I think something to call out as well is, anytime someone talks about AI, machine learning, or automation, there is an element of change management, right? It's scary. Is this going to take my jobs? How is a client going to respond to something that's just pure automated? I can tell you, our teams have completely enjoyed this because it helps their jobs easier. All this admin work, I keep talking about the low value, actions, we're automating so they can have more client conversations, which is a big part of the job, driving that story of providing value. But it's getting them a little uncomfortable with what they've just been doing. Well, we've been doing this for a while, why fix it? Well, based on data and testing, that's better. Let's try this. And it's not just a one-time close. There's lots of communication of why we're doing it from the top down. And it's really helped our teams understand that there's more automation to apply in certain circumstances. We've used automation for years, right?
Of course.
But there's so many different instances of automation, AI and machine learning, where it's more important about how and where you use it, not just if you use it.
Yeah, I'd love to ask you a little bit about, and also maybe bounce some ideas off we've got lots of different industries in this room. So you're leveraging data for automotive, which is going to be inventory data, incentives data, fill in the blank there if there's anything else I'm missing. But what I'd like to talk about is what other data can we use to help inform automated ad delivery?
So data is a pretty nebulous term. It can really mean anything. You can have your specials or your promotions. They don't have to be inventory based. We do a lot of inventory based stuff with Ben, but specials and promotions, value props for individual dealers that you've got in your market. But we could take it outside of that vertical, and we can go into things like multifamily housing is another big one that we work with. And in multifamily housing, as an example, they optimize their campaigns based on a forward-looking 60-day occupancy rate. They know if their buildings are going to be full or not full within 60 days. And that really changes how you engage with your consumer. Are you trying to get releases so that they're going to come back? You're going to try to re-engage your existing clientele, or are you going to be out looking for new residents, new renters as you go forward? So just that one number, that forward-looking occupancy rate, drives a ton of behavior in an automation system. How do we bid? Where do we target? What are we looking for as we go forward? So that's one. We have a cool story with a national gym, so locations all over the country. They have something where when they're trying to drive memberships, by week they know what their membership targets are. So throughout that week, they're constantly saying location A, location B, self-identified, so democratized data collection. They'll go out and they'll say, what is your goal? What are you trying to drive for memberships? That drives a budget and kind of an aggression factor on how competitive we are in our advertising. It funnels back in all automatically from that point forward and executes the ads nationally, which is really, really cool. Local advertising run nationally. So it's data can be almost anything you would make a decision on, Heather. And it's a very cool thing to have a platform that can really work with almost anything.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, even as your wheels start turning, you thinking about the data that you'd like to action that you have available to you, what we have found is most of the data, unless you're able to action it in real time, it becomes irrelevant if it's in the past. So if you're an events company and you have outdoor event and weather is important to you, we can look at the weather forward looking for the event and determine, is it going to be a rain out or not? If you're selling tickets and you have the event 95% sold out, you may want to turn that advertising off. So think about your industry, think about relevant data that should be informing your advertising, and that could be something that we can build into a decision tree for that advertising to kind of turn on, turn off.
My favorite part of that story is like when you make that decision, look for a partner that can really execute your decision trees. I'll tell you something that was really counterintuitive to me. One of our early clients was an HVAC client, heating, air conditioning, that kind of stuff. And it would seem obvious to me that when it gets hot, you advertise air conditioning, and when it gets cold, you advertise heating. We pitched that idea. They were quick to say, air conditioning sells itself when it's hot, heating sells itself when it's cold. And they had a great beat on that. So it wouldn't be this rote strategy that someone else gave. They had a philosophy on it, and you can automate to that, which is very, very cool. So look for the services, the teams that are underfulfilled because your air conditioning teams are, they're flat out. But how are we going to, feed the rest of the team that, is starved for work? So it was a cool philosophy. It was a cool strategy. It was counterintuitive to me, and that's why I think that these decision rules and automation rules need to be really flexible.
Awesome. So for everyone here who's going to leave and think about, well, maybe we're doing a little bit of automation, but we could be doing more. Let's talk about what they should leave here thinking about. So I'm going to kick it to you guys to tell us a little bit about, if you're thinking about wanting to go in this direction, what are the things you need to know?
As I said earlier, as an ops organization, you have to be a student of your numbers and what your teams are doing, right? And then find those low-value actions or any type of admin type work and automate it, right? There's tons of automation tools and platforms, but get those team members to start being more strategic with their clients.
I don't know if the Paul video was a surprise to anybody, like how long that job actually takes, but understanding that job, knowing that there's a lot of low-value work there, I think that anchors into what Ben was talking about here. So understanding what processes you can and should automate. But the second part is good data hygiene kind of matters. And there are some things that we can do today that we couldn't do before. AI can help normalize data, and that's pretty neat. Little non-deterministic, but it's kind of neat. But if you can do some more stuff like what Ben's currently doing with that onboarding flow, where you collect that data in a clean and structured way, the rest of the automation kind of falls into line. And then, if I were to say one thing, anytime you break an automation workflow, like where you have to put a person in the middle of it, and sorry if there's anybody from Pinterest here, you do it a lot, Pinterest. If you break up that automation workflow, it really erodes it a lot. So think about having singular tools. The lowest hanging fruit for us to save time is not to do multiple logins, not to create those campaigns on Microsoft and Google and Meta, to have a philosophy, build your core campaigns, understand your goals, and distribute those things. So I think that that's one of the things that you really want to take a look at is good data hygiene leads to great automation, leads to impressive time savings.
Awesome. Well, that leaves us with scan the QR to learn more. But that leaves us with a few minutes. If anyone had any questions, we could open up to about 2 or 3 minutes of QA. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tom Sheepshanks. I'm in the measurement space. Love a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing. I was really interested to understand how much you thought about the process and conversations back in with finance in terms of the decision flows that happen in terms of the work that you were saying you can help with in terms of helping people get strategic and figure out how to improve things. How do you plug into the finance team as well so that you can give people more control and creativity to test new ideas within the automation that you built as well? So like plugging back into that piece. So the question was around how we plug into finance systems or finance teams? The relationship that your teams will have with your finance teams in terms of what they can spend and where, etc. There'll be a bunch of logic and rules around that. So being able to automate that process well to be able to speed up the whole process. I kind of see your point. Well, oftentimes these are contracted advertisers. So Ben, as an example, runs a very large portfolio of advertisers. So that contract is done upfront. So when we talk about that onboarding component, data is data. We can talk with his Salesforce integration. We can find out what that contract was and then work within those bounds. Now,
The interesting part is how you do experimentation from that point forward. So when you saw that ecosystem of multiple channels, having flexibility to flow between different channels and try new things within channels, trying one of the new bidding strategies, all of those pieces are still within that one ecosystem. Now, one of the things that we do with the platform is make budget recommendations. So that fires back into the finance systems, back into the ERP systems, and allows people to work those opportunities, but you do have to get permission. You know, evidence of arrangement's an important thing. You can't really bill anybody if they didn't tell you you could bill them. So it's a really important workflow. I think the EBIT flow back and forth from and to your CRM system, super important.
Great. Anybody else? Yeah.
I'll need a mic. Okay. Quick question. Do you have any experience in the pharma industry? Because I know it's a very highly regulated space, very sensitive. Just curious.
I will say only unintentionally. There's a lot of things like city names that get caught up in the pharma regulations. So currently, I will be the first to say I have not done much in the pharma space. But we do have a lot of regulated industries within the platform. Fair Housing Act, as an example, has a lot of regulations. Ben carries along a lot of OEM compliance rules and regulations and credit restrictions. So there are components that you can work with in an automation platform that you can structure around those regulatory things. And what ends up happening is you don't fall into them accidentally anymore. Once you get your automation set up to be protective of those components, it becomes much more patternable, easier to get it right the first time. And that's what I think that we found with the spaces that we're in currently.
Great. I think we have time for one more question if there's one out there.
And it's been fun. I'm glad you guys were here. Thanks for being an attentive audience. Anybody else?
That's it, right on time.
Oh, no.
Oh,
there's
oh,
one
no.
right- Yes.
I'm curious what happened with Tom. Like Tom was the video.
Oh, with Paul.
Paul.
That was an interesting video, but can you maybe highlight what cut it down from 30 minutes to X amount of minutes?
Have you ever seen one of those videos where you can train a robot with your hand? Like it's like a robotic arm and you can move it around and then the robotic arm does that thing over and over again? That's kind of what I see for the software version of that. We have taken a lot of the things that Paul would do, the decisions that he would make, and we made it so that the computer does it. If you think about data entry, computers are fantastic at that. Anything that you do over and over again, campaign A to B to C, all those things are like repetitive tasks that what Paul did is help us understand what we should be doing. He's codified that once, but then we can do the wash, rinse, and repeat. So Paul doesn't have to do any of that anymore. So it goes from that to zero. Now it's a button click of I want this playbook to be run on this account with this data. And it becomes a much easier approach. Love that question, though.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. And Eric and Ben are both available for questions after this, so feel free to come up and say hi. And thank you very much.
Thank you.